Price on all power. We're going now to agenda item 4.1 under governance, performance and assurance, and that's the report of the Director of Finance. Glyn.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the finance report this month, there's four sort of broad areas that I just wanted to cover off and bring to the board's attention, and also seek approval on some return funding as well. So firstly, I just wanted to talk around the revenue, financial position and the forecast. The paper sets out where we are and where we're heading based on the position at the end of December. You'll see that there is a small surplus emerging within the funding surplus that we've already agreed to hand back to Welsh Government. So at the moment, we're forecasting a surplus of about £700,000 at the end of the year. What I've also provided in the paper, really just so you get a sense of the level of detail and scrutiny that we look at every month, is what we call our sort of risks and opportunities long-haul table, which looks at all the potential financial implications of spending money, getting funding in, and so on. And we use this to try and sort of narrow down the forecast, particularly as we head towards the end of the year. So I've shared that really just so you get a sense of all the different variables that we have in trying to manage that financial position to the end of the year. And you'll see there's a number of things that could still happen as we head towards the end of the year. One of those, for instance, was around money that we were spending within the digital team prior to getting funding approval for the single platform business case. Now, until we know that we've secured capital funding, that's money that we incur against our revenue budget. So on the basis that we've now secured capital funding, we will then probably be capitalising some of that spend. So that's an example of something that's happened sort of late on in the year. We're working through exactly what costs we think we will be capitalising as part of that project, but that will probably generate again a small further surplus as a result of those changes. We've then got things like the spring cohort of students, and again, although we're estimating what we think the uptake would be, if that varies, again that could result in a small financial variance. But I think we're at that stage during the year now where the variation in some of these things is likely to be tens or hundreds of thousands as opposed to millions. So I hope that's helpful in just sort of setting out where we think we're going to be on our revenue forecast and position. In terms of capital, just to sort of reiterate what we sort of discussed before, the really good news that we secured funding for the single digital platform, but also IT refresh program. So that means that over the next 5 years, we've got about £1.1 million of capital that will invest in refreshing our IT program, as well as the £2.3 million that we've secured for the single digital platform. So I think that's really good news. What we're currently working through is how much of that we think we're likely to be able to spend this year, given that the decision was relatively late in the year, and we'll discuss that with Welsh Government in case we need to profile some of the capital funding between this year and next year. But again, really just making the board aware of some of that variability. Other than that, we'll plan to use our capital funding this year, and therefore we're forecasting a break-even position on our capital budget. Third area that I just wanted to draw the board's attention to then is around our payment of invoices. So we're currently meeting the payment compliance target of 95%. So this is where we look to pay all our non-NHS suppliers invoices within a 30-day target. So we're currently meeting that target, and expect to achieve that by the end of the year as well. One of the things that we're working through at the moment with other NHS bodies are the invoices that we have raised with each other, so trying to settle as many of those invoices before the end of the year. We've undertaken what's called a balance an agreement balance exercise between NHS bodies, so that we can try and make sure that there is few issues as possible at the end of the year on that. The final area then really that I just wanted to share with the board was around the draft funding allocation for next year. So as well as the education training plan, where we were informed by Welsh Government that our funding would be maintained at the same level as this year, we've also been made aware that the funding for our core budgets, so these are things like our pay budgets, paying our staff, the money spent on goods and services, but that core allocation will remain the same for next year, with the exception of any pay awards where we will see better funding. So again, our IMTP will be very much framed around how we live within broadly the current level of funding and agree our priorities within that. So I just wanted to bring those particular areas to the board's attention. The one bit that I'd just like to get approval on is, given that we're confident that we're going to have a surplus of probably at least 700,000, that we agree to return that funding to Welsh Government. And this is very much based on the premise that I don't think we can usefully identify ways of spending that money between now and the end of the year, and in the context of the NHS Wales position, which is very challenging. Welsh Government have asked us to identify and return those savings. We're happy to pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, Glenn. So can I open up to any questions or comments from board members? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a couple of comments, and thanks for really clear papers. And I like the table with less papers than the worst case scenario. I think that gives us an awful lot of information. So really happy with that. Just a few comments. We do get quite a few delays, as you might expect, in terms of being able to recruit and all the rest of it. So I just wondered, are we factoring in a better risk to that for the future? So because we're inevitably going to keep getting delays. Last year at the year end, we had a little bit of a swing, didn't we, that we weren't expecting in terms of budget, and I'm sure we learned the lessons from that. So we're comfortable that we're not going to suddenly find something. You can never be absolutely comfortable. I understand that completely. And then just one quick question. 19 million in Cresta seems very high. And it's 10.7 million in NHS. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, so just to pick up your first question, I think we're probably more confident about the forecast this year. One of the changes between this year and last year was the way that we accounted for the spring cohort of students. So this year, effectively, if their course starts in March, for instance, we're accounting for 1 month's worth of expenditure this financial year, for the year ends obviously at the end of March. Previously, we accounted for a lot more expenditure. So that's a change in accounting arrangements that we agreed with audit winners last year when we signed up the accounts last year. But as a result of that, I think it just narrows the variability that's likely to happen, really. We also do quite a few deep dives with teams, particularly around things like vacancies, so understanding the practical nature of, are you really going to be able to appoint this to this post within this time, given the leading time that we know there is often around recruitment as well. So I think we're challenging those assumptions a lot with around. Just to pick up the question on creditors then, you're absolutely right. Creditors, if you look at where we were at the beginning of the year, those have risen. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is we have with NHS bodies, we have a number of areas where we reimburse salary costs to health boards and trusts. Where they've raised invoices, some of those invoices we haven't paid yet because we're still trying to resolve with Welsh Government payable funding for this year. Once we've resolved that, we'll be in a position, I think, probably to pay those invoices. So we'd expect to actually make quite a few payments. We're currently meeting with Welsh Government. We've had meetings this week on an all Wales basis, and the aim is to try and resolve that by month 10, which is the end of January position. Again, I think everybody wants to try and resolve that before the year end, and of course give everybody clarity on their cash flow, because a lot of health boards are critically looking at their cash flow this year to the financial position as well. The other area is around where we put estimates in, so we call those accruals, where we know we've received goods or services from other bodies, but we haven't had an invoice. We accrue for that expenditure so that our financial position looks reasonably accurate. But obviously, because we haven't had an invoice, we can't physically pay anybody yet. So it will appear as a debt, if you like, or a credit in the balance sheet, but we obviously won't have paid our body. So those are the two main reasons.
Any other questions or comments for Glenn? Right then, so we're asked to note performance against the key financial targets. We're asked to note the forecast revenue surplus of 0.7 million. Note the risks and opportunities which may impact on the year-end financial position. Note the good news regarding approval of capital funding for single digital platform and IT refresh programme. We approve the return of a further 0.7 million revenue funding to Welsh Government for 2023-24. Have your approval?
Yeah.
Thank you. And note the anticipated co-allocation for 24-25, not 24-24, 24-25 for HAW, and the reconciliation for financial plan for 24-25, and the anticipated income to balance and financial plan for 24-25. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. And with everybody's permission, I'm going to go back to agenda item 3.3 at this point. And welcome, Chris. And you've got some characters with you as well. Yes. Steph and Miriam. Hi, Steph. Hi, Miriam. Hi. You're very welcome. They're nice people. As long as I tell them to be nice.
Yeah. So the revalidation support unit sits within the medical directorate, and in a way, it's a sort of thing that came to us because they were already cited in the deanery. But I'm so pleased that they're part of HIW. They've got a huge amount of work going on that covers a whole variety of areas that we already have in HIW, and additionally, they've got a fantastic team of which other departments of HIW are taking advantage of those individuals and who've got other skills, and they're moved around a lot of other parts of HIW to add to their own skills and also add their abilities elsewhere. So I'm not sure if you've had much of an update in the past as to the breadth of work that they do. So this is the opportunity.
I've taken a rather personal interest in it over the years.
So I'd like to invite Chris to carry on with the presentation.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Chris Price. I'm a GP in Cwmbran by trade. That's where I've been this morning, and that's why the agenda had been changed around. So thank you very much. Go to the next slide, please. So this slide is in your paper. It's the appendix to the paper, and this is the quantity of work that we produce on an annual basis. As you can see, there are some very big numbers in there, and I'd like to talk you through one of the streams and show you how not only do we produce quantity, we also produce quality. Next slide, please. So our brief overview of our remit, we're talking about CPD for Wales, for general practice, appraisal and revalidation. And the next slide, please. This is covered off by a central office team of 16 who run nearly 100 sessional staff in the periphery all over Wales. So we've got 90 GP appraisers approximately, and that's constantly in flux. We also run 3 CPD leads on a regional basis. Our appraisal coordinators run our appraisers on a regional basis, and there are 7 of those. And then we also have 3D program directors, and I'll touch on 3D towards the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So I'd really like to highlight the fact that quality management is embedded in everything that we do and always has been. We like to look at quality management as the cycle of introduction of quality controls, which are listed there. We assure against those controls, and then we look at quality improvement. So the answer we get from those quality assurance exercises, we then look into changing the quality controls, and therefore the cycle goes round again. And we have done this for the 20 years that we've been doing appraisal. The next slide, please. So there's a very, very brief organizational chart. So I oversee the GP appraisal coordinators, and they overlook the appraisers. And then Steph and Miriam have their own managerial responsibilities, both here, but within the appraisal process as well, and on a Wales-wide basis. Next slide, please. So this central once for Wales approach really does mean that a GP will get the same quality appraisal in Bangor, in Cardiff, in Carmarthen, and that is achieved by our appraisal coordinators who meet on a monthly basis with central office and amongst themselves to ensure that anything that is happening around the whole country is reflected in each regional meeting. We have a 4-stage GP appraisal recruitment policy. So there's application, there's shortlisting. We then do an interview and a role play. That sounds an awful lot for a sessional job, but when we have to literally cut down the applicants to 1/10 of what who actually apply. So we've had the situation where we've had 10 jobs and 90 applications. So it's a really popular job, and there's a rigorous recruitment process that again is quality controlled, and then the training process. So all of these then become attached to a regional team, and they're overseen by the appraisal coordinator who will look at all of their outputs until they are satisfied that they're good enough to fly alone. And that's followed up by National Appraisal Conference, which has happened every year for 20 years, bar one time during the pandemic, and then quarterly regional meetings where the appraisers can have local peer support, but the appraisal coordinator will run on the national agenda. We've also adapted the PADR for these sessional workers with the agreement of the people team into a more focused appraisal, which then fits in with the requirements of whole practice appraisal for revalidation for the appraisers, but also it includes our quality management in the fact that the appraisal coordinator will look at 2 or 3 appraisal summaries produced by this appraiser prior to the PADR, so that and they will feed them back in standardized form. We have a schedule that they mark against, basically. And then we also run appraisal insight monitoring. This is a significant event system specifically for appraisal. So out of that, we will then look at changes, so quality improvement should there be the need. We also do project work. One of the things that we did right at the beginning of the pandemic was all of our appraisals went from face to face to virtual. And we thought, oh, hang on, we're producing these appraisals for the purposes of revalidation. Are they good enough? And we actually were able to prove that they were accepted for the doctor, that they were still of quality, and we marked them to the quality, and there was no diminution in the quality from that and a face-to-face opportunity. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry, speaking. So when we look at revalidation support, we are responsible for revalidation support for all of the doctors of Wales, not just the GPs. We're responsible for revalidation delivery for all of the GPs. But the delivery of secondary care appraisal and others are done by their own designated body, but we still actually help support that process. We also do an annual quality assurance event where we get about 5% of all of the appraisals produced on an annual basis, and we mark them against a set of criteria that we've developed over that 20 years. And looking at each year, I can honestly say there's been a small percentage point every single year increasing quality. It's going to stop because we're up to 93%. So it's going to be, we're actually going to have to slow down, but it's 2% up this year. And then on behalf of the CMO, we quality assure the appraisal, the revalidation process in each of the designated bodies across Wales, both NHS and non-NHS sectors. We've just finished round 2 of visits. We did round 1 of visits, and the outcomes of that were fed back to and implemented by the designated bodies, and we went back round 2, where we've gone back, checked progress against that, and notably most designated bodies have implemented the changes we suggested. We will begin cycle 3 in 2 years' time. Next slide, please. So again, focusing on that Once for Wales, we've got an all Wales revalidation support package underpinned by Mars and the Orbit 360 system. These are all the meetings that we either support or chair, and they're all national meetings, and I'm not going to tell you about each one. It's all in the paper. And the next slide, please. So other key activities, just briefly, we do CPD to support doctors in producing the stuff for their appraisal, for their validation, and of course, for their own personal development. Interestingly, we've launched a physician associate pilots in Swansea Bay, where they're coming into the appraisal process. Currently, they will be appraised by medical appraisers. We've got 36 PAs signed up, which is their entire PA population. And there's already been 9 appraisals fully complete on Mars. This will report in June. The GMC have put it out there that the physicians associates are going to undergo a very similar revalidation process to doctors. I've been to the medical directors meeting, and they've indicated that they will act in this responsible officer role, but they won't be called responsible officers in the case of PAs. Our 3D program, which is our introduction to leadership program, and is very well subscribed. And basically, I'd just like to show you the next slide, where what we do is we base the candidate's experience around a project. This is one of the projects that was performed about 8 years ago, sentinel node biopsy in melanoma. This is very interesting because this was a service within the NHS that was not being supplied within NHS Wales, but was elsewhere. Is now fully up and running, and the story is on the link on the slide, which, because you won't have the slides, I'll actually say we do have the slides. Okay, so the link is on the slide, and there's a video of this consultant talking about how the 3D program influenced the success of this. And then the final slide I'm going to talk to, the veteran-friendly GP practice accreditation. This is off the back of the Veterans Covenant, where if you have been injured or harmed in the process of serving your country, you're entitled to priority treatment within the NHS. You're not entitled to priority treatment if it's nothing to do with your service, but if it is to do with your service, you are. We launched this in May last year, and Sir Frank visited my practice and presented me with the presentation with the certificates of accreditation. We have 31 GP practices across Wales, which is approximately 10%. And if you reflect that on NHS England, where a similar service has been going for about 4 years, they're only just over 10%. So we've done very, very well with that, working in conjunction with our forces support. And then the final slide is just to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the team. I've been to the 3D program. I've been subject to the appraisal program.
Subject.
But during this appraisal process, it's a massive opportunity, as I know, to have time with a colleague and to share what the hell is really worrying you, which may be nothing to do with your clinical practice, but may just be about life. And it is a unique opportunity. And I think it's one of the unsung parts that allows colleagues to sustain their ability to work. It's a bit of a safety valve. And of course, you did lead the way across the UK in selling appraisal, which is, you know, I can remember going to several national conferences where we're not doing this, not for a game of strawberries, but almost everyone, every GP in Wales, for your persuasion, the fact that if we are building it, we can actually design something that's going to be helpful. So from a user point of view, I'd like to say, yeah, it's very adequate. In fact, it's extremely adequate.
So the GP appraisal system was in place long before revalidation came into play, which is 2011. 2011. I was lucky enough to be the first person to revalidate somebody in December 2011. That was Malcolm. Malcolm Lewis was Chris's predecessor, and that was done in Swansea. It was 2012 where it really took off. So the thing that you mentioned about where you can have a conversation about things outside medicine, that's recorded in the personal constraints. And the personal constraints often overlap with your work constraints. And we do key themes from those findings that we share with the health boards, particularly if there's multiple people saying that they're reporting the same constraint, and we report that every year. Every year.
There's national constraints report and individual.
And the other thing is that which I can say, but you're too polite to say, is that Mars, I think, is the medical appraisal revalidation system is envied by huge parts of the UK. There's a system that we have in one country, one area, that we have a unique and consistent approach across the whole of Wales. And the other thing is that the Orbit 360 tool has been looked at by other people across the borders where they want to consider using it. Really good stuff.
Thank you. Thanks. It's very interesting. I wondered whether, I guess this is a bit of an off-the-wall question in relation to, there are a number of GP practices that are handing back their practice to health boards and giving up. And I just wondered whether you accumulated any data that could influence when GP practices, because of the appraisal system, identifying issues of concern, to raise those early enough with health boards to prevent it, or offer support. Is there any support mechanisms for those GPs that have demonstrated that?
I get an email or a contact probably at least once a week where something has arisen at an appraisal where the appraisers are concerned that you know, that there is somebody under pressure and distress, or somebody is doing something really bad that they shouldn't be doing, type of thing. I do get really wonderful things, you know, about 2,500 appraisals a year, and you know, a very small percentage kick up this sort of thing, but they do, when they kick them up, they're all individual. There isn't a protocol. The protocol is there. And you know, one of the 4 instances was that I had to a year or 2 back, I had to contact Push because we had a doctor that we were concerned was actually going to commit suicide that week, and hadn't told anybody apart from the appraiser. So we did a bit of work around it and turned out well. But yes, we do get things like that. The health boards do actually have access to the appraisal summaries through the medical director, the responsible officer, and their appraisal team. From the point of view of, would we alert somebody if there was an issue? We would, because we meet on a quarterly basis with the responsible officers' representatives to talk about individuals and matters that arise at appraisal. So we are very closely involved with all of the NHS designated bodies.
Is there support in place to help those GPs or
Yes,
by the health board?
by this organisation, honestly.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I need to tell you one just on in the paper you talk about the community program, it's a free educational program and who it's available to. Is it the extended primary care scheme as well? I noticed it says doctors, dentists, pharmacists.
We made that decision, that yes, the offering this year will be to the extended primary healthcare team. It's been limited up until now because we're oversubscribed anyway. It was initially developed simply for GPs, and it's just grown in incrementally rather than, you know, we made those rules at the beginning. It was where it came from and how it's developed over the years.
Oh, pleased to see that.
And the CPD resources are available to the whole primary care team,
Excellent.
specialty.
Jill?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks. I was fascinated by this. I've read it a couple of times, I'm afraid. So apologies, I'll rattle through. I've just got about 4 questions, if I could. Sorry. The first one's probably me being ignorant about it, but does it apply? I couldn't remember whether it applied to private settings as well as NHS.
So if you're working as a doctor and you need your license to practice, your validation applies to private settings as well. Some of the private providers, for example, the DVLA, they actually use Mars as well. But other private providers will use their own appraisal systems. We still support them with validation. They're still responsible, if they're registered within Wales, they're still responsible to the Welsh CMO as the higher level RO, and our inspections would need to go to these private places as well as public sector.
And then was it, I didn't get quite a grip on whether it was about competency to practice or performance effectiveness, and where the balance was in
the appraisal is owned by the doctor, the individual concerned, and the appraisal is about their personal development. Part of that is demonstrating achievements and then celebrating achievements through appraisal. The GMC requirements for the validation are in a 5-year cycle: quality assurance, patient and public feedback, colleague feedback, and a certain, you know, sort of CPD requirements, but their CPD requirement is on reflection and outcome as opposed to I sat there for an hour and was completely bored. So it isn't about performance management. It's about personal development and demonstrating that you are fit to practice.
So generally, performance is managed, particularly in secondary care, by job planning, whereas the appraisal part is done in a separate way for doctors. It's a revalidation process.
So for instance, job planning for consultants is done outside appraisal. Really brought to appraisal, gives a context of what somebody does in a working week, but it is not performed at appraisal.
Right. Compassionate leadership, as you know, is one of our sort of key themes. Is that built into the process?
I did have it on my notes to actually mention compassionate leadership because yes, we do.
And I guess I think you touched on it, but the public patient views, how are they fed into it?
Again, that's another thing what we did for it in our note I didn't mention. We have lay representative on most of the committees that I highlighted in the slide about committees. HEIW provides that lay representation on the visits that we go to for validation. We have a lay representative. So yes, we do. Oh, and lay representatives in our quality assurance of the appraisal output event.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. That's really interesting. I've also been subject to validation, but not GP validation. And so this leads me to ask, because in the beginning, Bush said that the general practice approach was actually, I remember, it was in place before everybody else sort of woke up and started to frame programs. But there are a lot of different programs across specialties. You've got a sense of if that's coming together, or is it now still a scene where each of the colleges does their own
Approach from the point of view of what?
In standards and actually overall approach, because the overall general practice approach is different.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you sort of probably overlapping there with the Academy of Royal Colleges, plus the own college requirements for maintaining your consultant status and so on and so forth. So they can bring that to appraisal, but obviously if there are college requirements, they still need to meet those. But in meeting those, there's presumably a very large element of seat meeting and development, which they can then translate into the appraisal process, where we are more interested, not in, yes, I've done it. No, we're more interested, well, what does it mean? What is the output? What changes have you made? How have you developed? As opposed to, have you been on a course? That we don't count hours, for instance, whereas the colleges do.
Sure. And you also mentioned in the presentation the pilot in Swansea on PAs.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's quite interesting. I just wanted to ask whether there are any other PA pilots around England, or is this just a one-off and is now a locally inspired initiative?
As far as I know, it's like Tigger with the only one.
I think there may be one happening in England somewhere, we've been aware, but we're not sure the details. I think when we presented on this previously, they weren't sure where. I'm hoping to get the details of that and perhaps join up in terms of good practice and data.
Probably keeping it very quiet.
Perhaps so.
There's the first stages of making PA and AA regulation pass through Parliament at the end of January, and is going to be seen by the House of Lords on 6th of Feb. So the revalidation is coming. The revalidation PAs will be coming following regulation being established. We just want to be ready for it with something, and I think this will be really valuable for us, and I think we'll probably lead the way in the UK on this as well.
We were in a meeting with the GMC on Wednesday, yesterday, sorry, and we heard that it's likely to be about 6 months after the legislature is passed, and then from 6 months on, all of these people will then need to initially register with the GMC, and then it'll be another 2 years before they'll be subject to a revalidation of that registration.
Thank you. And the outcome of the pilot will be really interesting.
Tina, you want to come back?
Yeah, thanks. That's just one another question. Where you've got PAs and potential dual regulation, So if you've got a PA that's already registered, let's say with the nursing literacy council, who do revalidation or contributions, I think it's got an associate professor to make the PAs.
So,
They set standards.
so the PAs are the ones through the Royal College
Yeah.
of Physicians. All people that work as PAs and AAs will be registered by the GMC. The GMC have already moved to, for instance, the good medical practice that they publish now covers AAs as well and PAs. So that when they do become registrants of the GMC, they will be subject to good medical practice. There will not be a double
Dual regulation.
regulation now.
Right, Chris,
Thanks.
team, thank you very much. It's
Thank you for your time.
much more interesting than the title. Much, and it's clearly a really very complex. The only challenge I give to the organisation is how do we make most of this example of good practice across the modalities? That's you know, I think it's a great benefit to go through an appraisal program. And to have it organised and to know that it is standardised and it is fair and it is open. And it contributes not just to your own well-being, but your patients' well-being.
We have a platform for dentists.
I thought you were going to say you have a plan.
Yeah, platform for community dentists. It's already in use, and we also are going to apply it for advanced nurse practitioners.
So we look forward to the cunning plan.
And
And
optometrists.
we look forward at some point to a unified common plan. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'll work on the time.
Okay. Okay. And going through to the agenda item 4.2, integrated medium-term plan split.
Thank you, Ray. Brief update on where we are. We're progressing with the 3-year INTP plan for next year. You'll be aware from some of the attachments that since the last time I think we met, we've now had national planning guidance issued from Welsh Government, which will also set out a timetable for producing our INTP. So whereas previously we were looking to try and produce the plan for this board today for approval, we've taken this opportunity to do a bit more work on it, and we're looking to change that timetable to the deadline for submission, which is on the 29th of March. So I've set out in the paper what the proposed timetable would be, and I guess most importantly for the board, we'd be looking to have board development session at the end of February, where we would work through what we think the emerging priorities are within the plan, but also some of the other key assumptions within the plan, like our level of financial risk that we want to take. We then bring the formal plan to the board in March, and we look to probably submit it on the same day, because 29th of March is actually a Good Friday bank holiday, so we'll be looking to do that before then. Couple of things that I just wanted to sort of flag up. So we've previously spoken about the education training plan, and depending on the content of that and how it's approved, there could be a level of financial risk that we choose to run with on the education training, which we just need to bear in mind when we're finalising our whole INTP for next year. We've also spoken about the foundation programme for junior doctors. Then again, that could present a financial risk for us, which again we would need to be managing, not just through the education training plan, but the whole of our INTP next year. And then the third area that I just wanted to draw the board's attention to, there's a number of areas in our plans previously that we've developed using staff who are either funded from sort of non-recurrent underspends or fixed term funding, and many of those staff are on fixed term contracts. that ends at the end of March this year. We're very conscious that a lot of those priorities are ones that we believe would be in our IMTP going forward, so therefore we'd want to continue to deliver those priorities from the very start. The timing isn't great for these things, as is often the case, and what we're looking to do is ask the board that we again proceed at risk with some of these posts so that we can complete the IMTP, retain the really valued staff, and also it avoids having to potentially go through the recruitment to some of these posts to deliver some of these priorities. I think I probably shared some of these figures within the board development session that we had in December, but I thought it was worth just reminding people again that we were looking at a financial risk of somewhere between £1 and £1.5 million. So in a sense, we'd be looking to manage that within not only the funding that we get on our paid and non-paid budgets, but also the funding that we get through the education training plan. I personally think it's a reasonable financial risk to run with. So my advice to the board would be that we support that way forward. I'm happy to pause there and take any questions.
We certainly had a discussion on that at the development. So can I ask if there are any questions or comments? So recognising that IMTP World is a magnum opus, we're asked to receive the progress and note the next steps for assurance. I'm asking you to approve the change to the original timeline whilst ensuring that the IMTP can be submitted, not substituted, submitted to Welsh Government by the deadline set out in the NHS planning framework, and we will meet our deadline, and approve the level of financial risk proposed in section 5 as part of finalising the IMTP. May I ask your approval?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenn. Yr iaith Cymraeg now, 4.3, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd, a dwi'n santes dwi'n ffacus iawn i chi. Felly, diweddariad ar yr iaith Gymraeg ydy hon, pan pryd dwi'n nodi gwybodaeth. Mae'n amlinellu'r gwaith diweddar yn un o'r gwaith yn wneud o'r cyfrifion gyda'r cynlluniaeth, ac hefyd o ran y gwaith yn ei wneud ar y cynllun 5 mlynedd mwy geiriau Llywodraeth Cymru. O ran y cynlluniaeth, bydd y losen yn ymwysodol fod yna 38 o feysydd gweithredu y tyfernwyd cynllun, ac mae rheini'n adlewyrchu'r sylwau iaith o ran y Gymraeg. Gan hynny, os ydy'n nifer llawr o feysydd gweithredu, mae'n bwysig bod ni'n gyson adnewyddu ymwybyddiaeth ac yn gwreiddio ein cynllun iaith. Gan hynny, mae'n gres gallu cadarnhau bod ni wedi pwysleisio gwyliwsredd Gymraeg yn y 6 mis diwethaf. O ran uchelbwyntiau'r gwaith da ni wedi bod yn wneud o ran yr iaith Gymraeg, da ni'n gallu cadarnhau bod 74 o y staff yn dysgu Cymraeg ar hyn o bryd yn hynny'n gyfystyr 20% o'n staff. Mae 82% o'n staff yn bellach wedi cyfnodi sgiliau iaith ar y system ESR, a mae hynny'n cyrraedd o lefel o 26% o 6 mis yn ôl. Ac efallai, bwysig cech nag unrhyw beth, da ni yn disgwyl bod nhw wedi cyfieithu dros 5 miliwn o eiriau Cymraeg yn 2022 sydd yn record. O ran ffocws ni ar gyfer blwyddyn nesaf, mi fyddwn ni yn edrych yn ofalus iawn ar y broses yn cynhyrchu iaith Gymraeg o ran prosesu sgiliau, swyddi ac yn ysgolodol, pan byddwn ni'n canolbwyntio ffocyso yn gwasanaeth ffôn, ac yn sgynedd y gwaith da ni'n wneud o ran y wefan ac o ran y gohebiaeth. O ran y gwaith, o ran mwy na geiriau, bydd y lot yn ymwybodol yn bod ni wedi cyflwyno ein adroddiad blynyddol i'r Llywodraeth Cymru Meddi, ac o'n braf iawn bydd yn bleser gallu cadarnhau o'r Llywodraeth wedi ymateb yn gadarnhaol iawn i'r gwaith a wneud llynedd, ac mae hynny'n cael ei adrodd yn ei adroddiad blynyddol ddim ar mwy na geiriau. Felly, papur i nodi gwybodaeth ydy hon, gofyn i chi gymodi'r cynnydd a mynd bydd yn gyntuniaeth am y geiriau ac hefyd bydd yn nodi diweddariad o ran lefelau cyfieithu sydd yn iachyd
So, all read the report. Are there any comments? Do you want to comment?
My Diane really know. And hopefully during the also the HRW and the federal for new party and for the Sarah.
First, thank you very much. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a request. The world is about, yes, you're doing these things, but what impact do you have it? Right? Mae'n ddigon o geiriau now wedi ysgrifennu yn Gymraeg, mynd allan o'r bwrdd. What is actually happening outside? To what extent is the work that we are doing actually leading to more consultations or more confidence in practitioners out there using the Welsh language? And I think one of the things we will need to think about going forward is that effect. It's an amazing record. When you ask me about should we note this, I think there's a word missing out of it. We should celebrate some of this. Mae'r iaith Cymraeg yn bwysig iawn I pawb. So my gut feeling is, why don't we just do what we usually do about show impact? And the impact we want is for Mrs. Jones and Bwrdd to be able to communicate properly through their home language when they most need it. So I think together with social care wins, we should actually think about how do we get a guesstimate of how, or some examples of how that has happened. And I'm sure we could bring anti-temp success stories here, good news stories, but I think as part of our report, impact is going to be much more important going forward than just effort, right? So I'm asking the board, please, to recognise the progress in respect of embedding our Welsh language scheme. I think we should celebrate Ruth's success. Yeah, but I think we should actually celebrate the fact that mwy na geiriau yn byw yma, mae ddim wedi blino, mae'n redeg. And we should
Sorry, to get back in roots, it's just easy. Just say that what we do in HRW is really noticed by other people and really appreciated. So I think to celebrate success would be a very appropriate thing to do. I think we celebrated it and other people saw it and celebrated it, that would be even better. But it is noticed and commented on.
Yeah.
If that's something that the board could engage with the Welsh Language Commissioner on, because, you know, to celebrate success at that level, when the board started, we didn't have the remit to actually push for that, and the organisation chose to do that. It wasn't included within the legislation. It'd be fantastic to have them actually give an external view in it as well, because we've had the videos, haven't we? They were very, very moving. From that perspective, but to have the Welsh Language Commission give some light to the public to demonstrate that.
Well, Tina, in your absence, I'll make a promise as the Welsh campaign on the board to try and push that agenda forward. Okay, and we're going to, I note the translation services. 10 million to really great. Dros 10 million. Yeah. And we're rhywun allan tu allan yn darllen. Right, okay, thank you very much. I'm going on to board self-assessment action plan, a really exciting stuff. Yeah, really exciting element, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd, mae o'n yn ddifyr dros ddifyr ben ac wrth gwrs am yn bwysig, felly mae dwy elfen i hon. Mae'r elfen sy'n edrych yn ôl, sef cyfnodi'r cynnydd o nai llynedd o ran weithredu'r amcanion o fewn y gynllun, ac roedd yna 11 o rhain llynedd ac mae'n 10 wedi cael ei gwblhau. Mae un yn weddill, mae wedi cychwyn sef ymgyrch Llywodraeth i gefnogi bod i gofyn o gefndir ffein yn meddu ac yn cael sgirio ar gyfer bod yn aelodau ar y bwrdd. O ran y cynllun ar gyfer y flwyddyn nesaf, bydd aelodau yn ymwybodol bod ni wedi cynnal un asesiad o barn y bwrdd nôl yn mis Rhagfyr, a bydd hynny wedi ystyried yn sesiwn y bwrdd nôl yn mis Rhagfyr o ran y canlyniadau. Mi oedd y mater y bwrdd yn ofnadwy o gadarnhaol, positif dros ben. Felly o ran yr ardaloedd lle byddwn ni'n ffocysu ar gyfer y flwyddyn nesaf, felly bod yna mater i'r ffaith bod y bwrdd yn mynd trwy cyfnod o draws newid, lle byddwn ni'n cael ffosiant o ran nifer o aelodau annibynnol, ac felly byddwn ni'n ffocysu ar datblygu'r bwrdd, ac yn meddwl yn dod i'r cyfarfod o'r sesiwn datblygu'r bwrdd yn Chwefror o ran hynny. Mi fyddwn ni hefyd yn edrych ar y ffordd yn marcio'r broses yn yn asesiad, yn unol â mewnbwn a gadwyd yn y cyfarfod mewn Rhagfyr. Felly yn gofyn, sôn yn gloi, bod y bwrdd yn nodi'r cynnydd am nai, llynedd, o ran y gwaith yn yn asesiad, yn 2023, a bod ni'n meddwl camau o ran yr ardaloedd sydd ar gyfer y cynllun
Diolch, David. Any comments? Of course, it all starts again now as we bring 2 new board members in. And I'm really keen that we use this process, not just to ensure continuity, but to ensure that we develop and establish ourselves again. So I'm asking you to note the progress made against the 23-24 board self-assessment action plan. And I'm asking you to approve the board self-assessment actions for the next year as outlined in the proposal paragraph. Yeah, thank you very much. We're now into 4.5, which is the key issue reports from the committees, and quite timely today is an update from the Education Commission and Quality Committee held on 7th of December. Tina.
Thanks. Just to say that there were a number of updates given by the medical quality assurance, especially regarding fill rates, and that it was reported that there have been 100% fill rate post-grad medical training in general practice, and also in foundation recruitment there have been 100%, but the recruitment process by the end of October there were 61 vacancies. I don't know if we've got an update on that at all.
Yeah, so what's happened is there's a balance between those that we commission, and then as a part of international medical graduate recruitment, which fills a large number of those posts, we have a number of people who don't take up those posts, and that's not in our control. And we sometimes know fairly late on. In addition to that, there's the core number of people who apply from UK medical schools who don't pass their exams, and therefore don't get put forward for foundation. So we ended up with a considerable reduction in the number of people from the fill position to the number of people who actually arrived. We particularly had an issue with IMGs from the Republic of Ireland, because over there they don't have sufficient foundation places for their medical students. And many of them put applications into the UK as a backstop for themselves. And we had 30 of those 60 vacancies were from Republic of Ireland applicants who then got jobs back in the Republic and wouldn't come to us. So that explains the 61 vacancies than we had last year.
I think it's important for the board to note with regard to the work that we've undertaken, and also when the education training plan going forward from the Welsh Government takes cognizance of the commission figures that we've asked in the supported budgets. Because it is important to maintain that workforce at that level. So, also there's very positive comments made from the dental quality assurance report and also pharmacy. And what's not in the paper, but I think it's important to mention, is that when we did a review of pharmacy education in line with the General Pharmaceutical Council, it would be helpful to review the research component parts of going forward, where if you've got new projects like that, maybe to the board to consider whether it's appropriate to have postdocs that can undertake the research right at the beginning. So we've got some evidence base of the impact, and whilst we discuss that, there's something that maybe could potentially go forward for a board development day to look at new innovative areas like that. If we were to encourage the postdoc research element of that, or somebody taking a PhD on that, that we could then have the evidence based on the impact going forward. And I think the pharmacy was a particular topic that we discussed in light of that. Also, I won't go into too much detail, but the optometry quality assurance report was also positive. And Lisa gave an update with regards to the nursing and health professional education, and understanding that there's been a record number of nurses who've been recruited, but that doesn't detract from the extra work that was put in by HIW staff to try to engage with the universities to increase the take-up rates for commission places, and that is enhanced. So I go back to my previous comment right at the beginning of the board, whereby a decision by Welsh Government as soon as we can to notify the education providers of the commission places is imperative for us going forward. And we also have the reports of self-assessment of the committee going forward. So I don't know, Gavin, if there's anything that you wanted to say on that, but I think that overall it was a very positive report, and there were some lessons that will be undertaken in the next year, but not significant ones.
Those will be reported to the next meeting in March.
And that's it.
Thank you, Tina. Okay. 4.6 is the in-committee decisions. I'm asking you to note that report. And then agenda item 5.1, the corporate risk register. You will recall that at the beginning of the meeting, I highlighted the corporate risk register as part of my chair's report. I've now made a decision that this is not going to come for information in future meetings. This is going to come for reflection at the end of the meeting. I'm going to show it at the beginning of the meeting for information, but I just want people to relook at this corporate risk register now. I haven't heard anything in this meeting that has changed any reflection on that corporate risk register. Am I interpreting that right? The two red risks still are very red risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, David?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, I've got only the business of saying yet again, diolch o galon I Ruth a Tina a pob lwc yn y dyfodol. Okay, thank you very much. I bring this meeting to an end. The next board session will be held on the 29th of February, which will be a development session. And we have a board meeting on the 28th of March here in Tydysgu. Diolch yn fawr.